Today, we are going to talk about how to sabotage your business. So, Neil's been in business, I think it's what, 21 years? What is it, Neil?
Yeah, you got it right.
Okay.
21 years, almost 22.
Yeah. So, I've been in business for about give or take 8, 9 years or so. So, we'll share some. You know what? The last episode, we talked about the importance of storytelling. We're going to tell you some stories here. So, Neil, you want to go first?
I actually have one big thing that's actually sabotage. There's actually two things that I've actually done over the years that's sabotage. So the first one, when I was younger, I had this problem of I wasn't focusing. I would always have like entrepreneur ADD. And even if the business was growing and doing well, I wanted to do 10 other things. But that just caused me to never do well and the businesses to suffer over time versus just focusing on one thing and doing it really well and better than the competition. That's probably the biggest mistake I made in my career, but I haven't had focus as an issue as of lately, or at least the last 3-4 years. The other one that was a big issue is, and these are the main two mess ups in my life. The other one was leverage, just spending too much money when I shouldn't have been spending that money. And I know that may sound really silly, but borrowing too much, trying to buy more, do more than I can handle. It's really crushed me. I remember the first time I did, I tried to set up my own hosting company called Vision Web Hosting. And it was supposed to be like a cloud computing company before AWS even was around. And the whole concept is how can you have a ton of servers and people share resources? And I remember I dumped over $1 million into that. I borrowed a lot of money, had to pay it all back, and it failed because of execution. Timing was right. Idea was great. We just failed to execute.
So, I'll share some stories from my side. And it's funny because earlier in your entrepreneurial career, you hear from everyone saying you have to focus. And you hear us say a lot on this podcast, you have to focus. But then it's like, when you really get slapped in the face, that's when you learn to focus, right? So Neil and I both have our versions of getting slapped in the face, but mine is, when early days taking over Single Grain, this is 8 years ago, I was like, oh, let's go ahead and let's start up like this YouTube channel. Let's start this podcast at the same time. Oh, and while I'm trying to save this company, why don't I just start a senior living business at the same time? And,
I remember that you were doing the senior living business.
Yeah. And that was like that was probably the biggest waste of time. And then I didn't learn my lesson initially. Then it's like, oh, let's try doing like this education thing. And then let's try adding this on. Let's try adding this. And then you realize, like, who are you to think that you could try 3 or 4 different things at once and then compete against someone that's totally focused on one thing? So we've learned that over the years. And Neil, do you want to share one more story? Or if not, I can go next.
Go for it.
Okay. So I'll go one more and then Neil will go with one more. Probably my biggest lesson, maybe I'm being arrogant here, maybe I'm not, but I do think I have a knack when it comes to people. Anytime where I've had any sense of doubt with any person, I've been 100% correct, right? And so the saying here when it comes to people is, if there's any doubt, there's no doubt. So not trusting my gut with people has come back to bite me time and time again. And like, if you have an eye for talent, you better trust that gut, because everything comes down to people.
Yeah. And the last thing that has really crushed me over the years is expanding too fast. So when things are going well, you just assume they're going to keep going well. So you may add on more products, more services, hire too many people, and just keep in mind, there's nothing wrong with growing a little bit slower and being a little bit more cautious, especially if you don't have investors, and taking the safe route, because what goes up goes down. Things don't just keep going up and up forever. There are bad cycles and bad markets. Just look at what we're in right now.
I'll add one more final one. So, in the very beginning, I had an assistant, and I remember I was in my mid-20s, right? And so she was saying something, and I got like, I was boiling with anger, and we were on a Skype call, and I thought I had muted myself. And so as she was talking, because cameras weren't on, I just cursed like really loud, right? And it got really quiet. And she's like, Eric? And then I was like, oh my God. And so I realized I missed the mute button. And so what's most important is not most important. One of the most important things I would say is, if you're going to lead any type of team, it doesn't matter if it's a company, if you're leading a marketing team, you are the leader. And if you can't keep your cool, what happens is everyone's going to lose their cool, right? Because it's like, let's say like, we're in a military operation and I need Neil to come in, like, Neil, everyone's dying in the room. Come over here right now. Like, he's going to panic, right? Or if I'm like, hey, Neil, like, we're in this room right now. We got we need you over here. Like, get here immediately, right? it's on you as a leader to keep your cool so you can drive the ship forward. Because if you panic, everyone else is going to panic, right? So that's what I've learned. These are just a couple lessons that we've learned over the years. Even though we told you these things, chances are you're probably going to have to still make these mistakes yourself. But like, let us know in a couple years how these things go. Hopefully they're not fatal, and hopefully they're just stories that you can tell. So that is it for today. Please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and we'll talk to you later.